Hi, this is Mike Benoit with Tyranny Busters. Today we're going to be busting some tyranny upon the mind of man that Peter Joseph and his Zeitgeisters are promoting. And since I get to the YouTube here, okay, we're going to play what he has to say on this Russia Today channel. And quite frankly, I don't know what Abby Martin is doing even listening to these guys. I guess it's sort of like more bread and circuses. Because and these guys get tens of thousands of YouTube videos, and what they talk about is how bad things are, and all we have to do is change an entire system, which means everybody in existence has to go to some system that they imagine that they can't even articulate and elucidate on. So we're going to play some of this. This is a 30-minute video. I'm going to play 10 minutes of it, and start and stop it and critique what he says during that period of time. So here we go. And again, I don't understand why Abby Martin gets all enthralled with this guy yeah, let's go.
Are acquired or regenerate geometrically. So in this ethic, he said that.
Okay. Back to the beginning. Here we go.
The dictionary defines zeitgeist as the general intellectual, moral, and cultural climate of an era. And even though the 21st century has forced humanity into so many different fractured elements, there's an inescapable need to unify to ensure a future for our species.
The 21st century has done something. It's sent us into so many fractured units. I don't know how you can blame a century for doing something, but let's go ahead.
It's with this in mind that the Zeitgeist movement was formed as a collective call to challenge the global status quo. And next month, on October 4th in Los Angeles, the organization will host its 4th annual Zeitgeist Media Festival, which has traditionally brought together artists, activists, and musicians to enthusiastically embrace the solutions to the global problems we face. Earlier today, I was joined by the founder of the Zeitgeist movement, Peter Joseph. I first asked him why the themes of his festival are integral to the revolution of consciousness.
Activism has been the cornerstone of development, social development, experimentation, technological development. All these things have interweaved. All the great scientists of the past that have made massive contributions have also been free thinkers and great artists, from Arthur C. Clarke, who had basically invented satellite communication, who was also, as you may well know, one of the greatest nonfiction writers and quite prolific in his view of the future world, to Albert Einstein, who played the violin, and Nikola Tesla. There's a deep-seated experimentation in art, needless to say, as you well know, and that bridges open-mindedness, that bridges creative thought, experimentation, courage, of course, which is something that's long lost in our world when it comes to being willing to risk your identity, risk your reputation to do something different, experiment. So the Zeitgeist Media Festival, in a lot of ways, is a parallel.
Okay, so I heard nothing. All right, just idle chat, idle banter about how artists are creative and free thinkers and whatnot, et cetera, that your Hollywood people are all artists too. So that gives me nothing of substance. Let's go.
To our intellectual day, Z-Day, as it's called, or Zeitgeist Day, which occurs in March of each year, which is a very intellectual day, highly organized as far as trying to present solutions to global problems, very heavy, often depressing.
Very intellectual day. They're going to present solutions to global problems. Psychobabble to me.
You might add, as you might understand, considering the state of the world. And so we try to balance it in the fall of each year with the Zeitgeist Media Festival. It's an inspirational type of event, and I encourage anyone out there to come out if you're in Southern California.
I'm really sad I'm missing it this year because it really was such an amazing event. When I was there, it was incredible. I encourage everyone to definitely check it out if you're in the area. And let's talk about the Zeitgeist movement as a whole, Peter. You famously created those 3 mind-blowing viral documentaries breaking through some of the most dominating myths that keep humanity stunted.
Breaking through some of those, where'd you get a writer for this? Some of those dynamic myths that keep humanity stifled. I'm waiting for these. Boy, he's just busted some myths that keep humanity stifled.
Spawn an international organization pushing for an alternative future. Briefly talk about what the Zeitgeist movement is all about.
Sure. The Zeitgeist movement is a global sustainability advocacy organization. And what that means is we deal with 3 primary issues: public health, ecological sustainability, and social stability. And clearly all of those
Global what? Global sustainability issues. You deal with public health. What else? Let's read. I didn't write this down. Let them say it again.
Ecological sustainability and social stability. And clearly,
Ecological sustainability and social stability. Okay, he's got the answer for all of them. That's pretty good. And it's not going to be a centralized top-down government that's going to do this. Okay.
all of those intertwine in a systems context. And I'll just jump to the end realization. If we alter our basic socioeconomic system, the underpinning.
If we alter our basic socioeconomic system, the underpinning, so he's going to alter our whole basic socioeconomic system. And of course, all the cult followers are right there with him. How's he going to do that?
Of everything that we do, we can call it market economics, we can call it capitalism, we can even go deeper to address the actual foundation of what those words and what the system actually organized out of. If we take that and we modify it a certain way, we can resolve all of the major problems we have in the world today, from poverty to the propensity towards conflict, to the growing and developing mental illness, to the huge lapse of public health, to these enormous flaws. We don't need to live this way anymore if we're simply obtain the type of efficiency in industrial practice that we're now capable of doing through technological development. And that's the big realization. And if anyone wants to learn more about that, they can read the book that...
We don't need to live this way. That's the big realization. No duh. No duh, exactly no duh. All right, we don't need to live this way. But some people are causing this action to occur, and it's not the system. And you're not going to have some new system and these same actors that are causing this stuff to occur disappear.
It's been written, that's free online, called The Zeitgeist Movement to find. Or they can go, of course, to the Zeitgeist Movement's website, thezeitgeistmovement.com, and see hours and hours and hours of lectures and general media on this subject. But I would add one more thing, is that all of the problems we see in the world today are not going to be resolved within the framework of the current socioeconomic.
All the problems we see in the world today are not going to be resolved within the framework of the current socioeconomic system we see today. So and you know what? All the stuff I've seen by this guy, he's not come out and said, here's the new system, okay? Here's what works. He's saying this doesn't work, this system doesn't work, we've got to get rid of this system to solve all of these problems. And actually, you know, it's like saying the car doesn't work because the carburetor is plugged, all right? These problems would be solved by going back to a system that protects individual liberties, individual rights. He's talking about healthcare. It's like he's just got a thread of socialism through everything he says.
Economic model. It's a very bold statement, but that unfortunately is the conclusion that's drawn by the movement with an immense amount of supporting evidence. And until we start to address this core source-based root problem, we have a lot of running in circles to do, unfortunately.
Right. You said that activist groups fighting for their respective causes, working within the framework of that system, is failing. It's basically because they're merely patching the problem. It's mostly fruitless, unfortunately. Explain the difference between categorical and systems thinking and how people can take effective direct action.
That's a great polarized qualification: categorical thinking versus system.
Categorical thinking versus system. And when he gets done thinking with this, or discussing this, I want you to tell me if you got some kind of concrete concept out of this
thinking. I'll jump deep just for a moment. You know, we evolved with a 5 sense perception, and we are very tangible. We want to palpably understand and perceive, but it's also very limited. We think categorically. We identify things by objects and words and subjects, and we tend to organize our sense of causality categorically in a very narrow, or I would say truncated, frame of reference. And this has permeated just about every major social facet, from the way we think about the legal structure, to the way we think about economics, of course. Even, of course, as you mentioned, activism, which everyone seems to really mean well. They really want to resolve problems. They're going to their state legislatures to try and get legal legislation in place.
if what he's talking about is people don't recognize original causality that causes an effect, that you apply a causal change to that situation that caused that effect, or you're trying to change that effect, and then you move down, and that new causation you apply creates a new effect and it causes a new situation. Is that what he's trying to explain here?
Say stop climate destabilization, stop the resource overshoot that is dramatic. It's been estimated we need
stop climate. This is nothing more than the psychobabble from the left. We're destroying the Earth's climate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What else did he just say there? Never mind. Let's go on.
27 more Earths by 2050 to meet demand.
27 more Earths? Is that what he said? We need 27 more Earths to reach the population growth? Is that what he said?
Of the 9.5 billion people coming, and I'm sure you're very aware of all the other social and ecological issues that pertain to this. And these resolutions are trying to use a system that, in the interpretation of the movement, in which the system's awareness is actually flawed in and of itself as well, is actually completely vulnerable to the wrong propensities, which is essentially the nature of the market system and its influence to stop this type of interest in efficiency, preservation, and sustainability. Efficiency, preservation, and sustainability are the enemies of the current socioeconomic system.
Did you just hear that? Let's play it again.
Stop this type of interest in efficiency, preservation, and sustainability. Efficiency, preservation, and sustainability are the enemies of the current socioeconomic system.
That's just psychobabble.
Now, that's a slight deviation. Systems thinking, which I'll jump to in more of an intense manner, has to do with the largest causal technical reality you can conceive of, which wasn't in our awareness in early evolution. It was all purely tangible. It took the scientific method to come forward to start to realize, say, for example, dynamic equilibrium, to look at a forest, and instead of cutting the whole thing down and realizing that it's not regenerating fast enough based on the consumption of it, to actually be able to measure this, to be able to measure the planet, to be able to measure energy consumption versus resource availability. These are basic, fundamental sustainability and efficiency aspects that you'll see throughout anyone.
Well, he waxes on. Let's do that again.
And instead of cutting the whole thing down and realizing that it's not regenerating fast enough based on the consumption of it, to actually be able to measure this, to be able to measure the planet, to be able to measure energy consumption versus resource availability.
To be able to measure energy consumption versus resourceability. You know, the resources are limitless. This universe, the sun, the energy, all of that, these guys are acting like this planet is already overcrowded. This is nothing more than the socialist left. And I'm surprised with Abby Martin, because I thought she was a libertarian, to buy this nonsense and to be enthralled by this guy.
These are basic, fundamental sustainability and efficiency aspects that you'll see throughout anyone's involved in the technical sciences. And sadly enough, our social system doesn't have any of those qualifications built in. The legal system, I'll throw that one out there as a final point, as this contrast between categorical thinking and systems thinking. The legal system is explicitly based on the idea of humans' free will and their decision, as though there's no other influences, to make this or that choice that may or may not be socially offensive.
No, that's the total opposite of what this legal system is. It's supposed to be able to protect an individual's free will choices, except when those free will choices violate another individual's free will choices. But instead, our legal system is a perversion. It violates your inalienable right to pursue life, liberty, and property, to preserve these things. In fact, instead, it violates all of those things. So what did he just said? What did he say? It's protecting your individual free right choice to do harm. Psychobabble.
So when we throw people in jail, is that a solution to anything? And statistically speaking, most people that go to jail come out with a higher propensity to commit more crimes. So clearly it doesn't work in the long run. And it's obviously not addressing the system consequence. And anyone that you talk to in the basic public health sciences will tell you that the leading cause of crime and violence is deprivation. What's the leading cause of deprivation? Social imbalance, inequity. So,
well, the leading cause of crime and what else did he say? Is deprivation. deprivation is the leading cause of crime. Okay. Some of the richest people I know are the ones that, I don't know them, but some of the richest people out there are the ones, they're not deprived, but they commit murder. And sure, a criminal injustice system is something that is flawed. It's flawed. It's deeply flawed, but it is something that's within the overall system that should be based on the idea of victim restitution. But he gets into talking about something, mentions some concept like we should be having mental hospitals for these people and providing mental health care. Again, your socialist, leftist, unless he thinks that the heavens will provide all of this stuff.
If you want to stop a lot of these huge negative tendencies and violence and aberrant behavior, the best solution at this point is to reduce dramatically class inequality and give people what they need and limit deprivation. So
reduce class inequality. Take from the rich, redistribute to the poor, and eliminate the inequality. And then everything will be fine. Just steal from the rich.
There's a good example.
Incredibly enough, I found the most amazing statistic that exemplifies exactly what you're saying. Right now, Peter, there are 356,000 Americans with severe mental illnesses in prison. That's 10 times the amount that in state psychiatric hospitals. I mean, it's just an incredible statistic.
All right, well, Abby, are you condoning that they should be in state hospitals because there's 10 times as many in prisons? Or should they not be in prison or not in state hospitals? This Russia today, is this making, I mean, the Russians were communists and socialists. Is that what you are now? And this Zeitgeist guy is presenting here that money should be taken from the healthy and taken and put these people in state hospitals and have that pay for it? Is that what you're advocating?
How does that play into the concept of structural violence, and how much of the current system necessitate that crime and poverty?
Well, there's a few angles on that. You can compare countries that have different levels of class imbalance and then compare their public health outcomes. This is,
in this depravity, yeah, and like they're the low underclasslings are the ones that are doing all the crime. The greatest amount of crime is by your rich elitist bankers, federal gangster bankers, and your politician guys that are going out there mass murdering people every day, and they're not deprived.
I encourage people to read. There's hundreds and hundreds of studies on this issue. There's one book called The Spirit Level by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett that I encourage people to research, which comprises the majority of this research. And what they find is that there's a massive increase in mental illness. There's a massive increase, or I should say decrease, in education levels, a massive increase in violence, and a lot of the vast majority of negative public health attributes increase in societies that have massive wealth imbalances. So in America, which has...
All right, he's saying that all these flaws in humankind increase in societies where they have massive wealth imbalances. Well, I'll tell you where they increase. They increase in the production, the socialist, communist redistribution of the production of the sum, the people that are producing, and giving to those or to those that aren't producing, your wealth redistribution. Because those that are not producing, that are just drawing and living and parasiting, are definitely going to be depraved. They're going to have a lower mental condition. They're not going to have self-esteem or pride. And the other class of people that you've turned into tax slaves, that you're turned into indentured servants, are on the treadmill, stressed out to the max. And this Abby Martin is listening to this Peter Joseph Zeitgeist nonsense.
Well, as a one brief aside, it is noted that due to cost efficiency in the state, they pretty much cut all mental health services in the 1970s and decided that the prisons...
Oh, you're sad about the state cutting mental health costs. Let's get your socialist Karl Marx book out here and we'll read from it.
Would be the new mental health facilities. So that is a point of influence, but that of course is a deeper, a more shallow link in the chain that leads to this. Clearly all of the imbalance and shame and inequality, which has a deep emotional impact, generates all of these factors, statistically proven. It's not conjecture.
Balance and shame and inequality generates all of this. You've got it for certain, Now let me tell you something, okay? If somebody's able to keep the fruits of their labor and that's protected and they produce something, you know, the person that's getting this supplemental security income check from the socialist state is not as happy. He's more depraved, more depressed than if he had to go out and sweep floors for a living and actually produce something. That's where it's at. That's what it's all about. But you want more income redistribution. No wonder you find an audience.
So anyone that questions that should go out and look into this. If we don't take a systems perspective, nothing gets resolved. We run in circles. Even the criminal propensity, everyone's obsessed with criminal politicians and corruption. The analogy I use is that you can stomp on the ants that come out from under your refrigerator and keep stomping on them and spraying them and trying to get rid of them. Or maybe you can remove the spoiled produce or food that's behind the refrigerator that's actually causing them to come.
Yeah, well, you don't throw the refrigerator away, okay? So there's things that are wrong within a system, okay? We have a society, and there's lots of things that are right in that society, and that's where people get along, and they do it by cooperation and voluntary exchange, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, within the system that this society has built, it's built a government that has morphed into a state, a government that just, basically governed by consent to a state that mandates. And there's lots of things wrong with this state that we have now. And I mentioned the redistribution, and I mentioned all the mandates and the controls, the violation of our individual right to preserve our life, liberty, and property, and self-ownership. All of these have been destroyed. And that's why people don't value their lives, their property, and other people's property, because they don't own it, because the state owns it. People like you advocate for such ownership, and you do it with a straight face, like you believe it.
And that's what this society doesn't do. It doesn't resolve any of its problems. And to add one more punchline to that, it's not profitable to resolve any problems in this society. Peace and sustainability and efficiency, these are things that...
Yeah, it's not profitable to allow the society to work on its own without plundering it. And that's what's wrong with the system, is the plunder that's within the society. And that's what's wrong with your prison industrial complex, your military industrial complex, your socialism, fascism industrial complex, your fraudulent Federal Reserve currencies. Those are the tyranny. This is the giant Godzilla in the room that's sucking the life out of the system. And you just want to come up and say, you don't want to blame that stuff. Actually, you blame that there's not enough of that redistribution of the production. That's enough. 9:52 on this one. I may do number 2 and number 3. We'll see how this one goes over. I'm going to close this out. Stop the broadcast. Mike Benoit with Tyranny Busters. Looking for your feedback on this one.